Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Ali Mahrouz. I'm the Vice Chair of the Finance, Insurance, and Tax Committee here at the Bahrain Chamber. We're very happy to bring to you today a session in collaboration with Benefit to cover the introduction of the ECheck platform. I'm pleased to have with me today our friend and colleague from the Benefit Company, Ms. Shafat Al-Kuwaiti, who is the Head of Payment Services at Benefit, who will be going through the session today, introducing what is the ECheck platform and what do people need to know about it, how do they benefit from the platform, and then we will go into a Q&A session after that. So any questions that you may have during this time, please send them through to the chat box below, and we will take them over at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I think I'll hand over to you, Shafat, if you want to go through and just give us a little brief about what is the ECheck that everyone's been talking about so far.
First of all, I'd like to thank Bahrain Chamber for arranging this workshop, this seminar. I'm sure this is not the only one. There will be more and more yet to come. Yeah. And I think that the ECheck is a very important project when it comes to commerce in Kingdom, specifically within the SME markets. And I would like to shed the light on what is the ECheck and what are the advantages of the ECheck, the drivers behind the ECheck, and other important aspects as a first introductory session. So to start with, the ECheck project, of course, I'd have to thank the Central Bank of Bahrain, being the having entrusted Benefit to provide a service to the market and having appointed us as the operator of the ECheck in Bahrain. We are the operator of the Bahrain check truncation system since 2012. So extending the ECheck is just a natural evolution of our journey with the regulator as well. But I also like to thank as well the TRA, the Telecom Regulation Authority, for accrediting us as a trust service provider for providing digital signatures and certificates, which is vital for us to be able to have an electronic check in the Kingdom of Bahrain. And I'm very much happy and proud to say that the ECheck in Bahrain, the way that it's been designed, the comprehensiveness of it, how we've been taking into consideration all the trading aspects and important, commerce aspects of checks, makes the ECheck a first of its kind in the entire globe. And we're one of the first countries to provide such comprehensive, cohesive environments. So at the very start, if you can go to the next slide, if you allow me, we'll let the speaker on a slide.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you, Ali. You're great here. So what is an ECheck? So an ECheck is, as the name implies, it's a paperless check. So it's completely paperless. It's completely electronic and digital. It is, from a legislative perspective, from a legal perspective, it is still a negotiable instrument. It is transferable and negotiable instrument. Even though in the first phase of introducing the ECheck, as per the central bank, let's say, current regulations, it's only account payee. Right. So it's not negotiable, but from a legal complex and from a legal context, it could be easily changed to be a negotiable, transferable record in the future. And that's a very important feature when it comes to checks in particular. And that's why checks is used heavily within trading, within the SME markets, in particular due to the negotiability and transferability aspect of it. Another important point that the ECheck, we made sure that when we convert the paper into electronic check, we don't lose any of the legal attributes of the check itself. So having a returned or a bounce check is still a criminal offense. Right. We haven't changed any of those legislatives and laws around the checks. We've just digitalized it. The check, once written, when it's not the date of writing the check, rather the date of the check itself, it's valid for 6 months, just like a normal paper check. So we haven't really changed those as well. And which is very important, is that the ECheck as well is allowing any issuer to write a post-dated check. Right. And post-dated check is extremely important when it comes to buying on credits within the SME, within the commerce market, because it's a guarantee, it's a security for that the payments will be fulfilled and the payment will be paid. Right. That is why it also works as a security as a security or a guarantee check, without the intention of eventually depositing the check or clearing the check, or with the intention of depositing or clearing it. So we're not really changing any of the current behavior on the paper check whatsoever. The last point is that today, for example, let's assume that I've taken a check as a guarantee, I've given you certain supplies, and I've told you I'm going to keep the security check with me until you pay me. So once you pay me the amount, I either have the right to return the check to you, or if I want, I could, without you paying me, I will be just using the check as a payment method. But let me assume that I'm using the check as a guarantee method over here. So once I have paid you the amount, then you will be able to cancel the check and to return the check back to me as a drawer, which is an important, let's say, aspect when it comes to securities and guarantees checks. So that is a very important point to mention as well.
So what you've effectively done, you've taken the existing process, you've digitalized it.
Precisely.
And if I would say slightly enhanced it, because that last part is always a trouble for businesses, because
True.
Going back to get that check back once you've fulfilled your obligation is always a hassle.
True.
I think you've made life simpler as well. So I think as the advert is, you've evolutionized the check process.
Well, that's a nice way of saying it. I totally agree with you. But I'd just like to mention one important thing. The check is a transferable record, and it's under the ownership of the payee once signed. So the payee has to cancel the check. So it's not like the drawer is able just to the drawer cannot cancel the check once written and signed.
Right.
The same applies for the electronic check, but the payee will be able to cancel the check based on a commerce.
I'm not held liable, or at ransom, if you will.
Precisely.
I have that flexibility and control as well.
True.
It's very good to know.
So why are we going to ECheck? What are the advantages of ECheck? Obviously, today when you are having a paper check, as a payee, you're a doubt in a lot of aspects and attributes, whether this check will be cleared or not. The reasons or the let's say the possible failures of clearing the check are multiple.
Right.
For example, the signature might be invalid, there might be some problem, technical clearing issues, not financial related. With the ECheck, once you receive the check from the drawer as a payee, at that point of time, instantly you can guarantee that there are no technical clearing issues of that check. That any kind of failure in clearing the check in the future, it will only be related to financial, whether there is no sufficient balance or the account status, let's say, is blocked or dormant or whatever it is. So that is one of the important attributes. So it is linked to a digital certificate, which means that today, as per the current laws in the country, which we will go through later on, inshallah, in a later slide, having electronic signature recognized at the courts of law is vital for any check being used and traded among. So therefore, we're linking that with the digital signature accredited by the courts of law in Bahrain as per the certification we recently got from the TRA. The second important point is that it cannot be lost or stolen, and because it's completely electronic and it cannot be counterfeit. So we don't have the problem of having a forged check or having a stolen check or a lost check. We've completely eliminated that by digitalizing it over a secured environment.
Yep.
We also, which is a very important topic to discuss from a commerce perspective, is the traceability of the check. For example, today, when I am dealing with company A as a supplier, and I'm shipping them goods based on, let's say, sales on finance, and I'm having checks as a security, today one of the problem I have is that I don't have full visibility over the exposure of the customer that I'm dealing with. So how many checks are there? Positive checks are out there? Are those checks, let's say, bounced back, or are those checks in essence mostly cleared? Is this a customer that I'm able to trust and ship him the goods without receiving the actual fund and just have the check as a guarantee on my hand? There's lots of uncertainty over here, and that's mainly due to the lack of the traceability of the information around the total exposure of checks being paper. When we transfer them to an electronic platform and having an e-check, then I'm providing the commerce environment and the commerce community within Bahrain full traceability of the overall exposure of post-dated checks.
Right.
And not only the total amount of checks, but also you will also be able to tell to whom those checks were written or those checks in general, if I may say, returned, bounced or not.
Right.
Now, the accessibility to this data as we speak today is not yet readily available. Mainly that is because, as you're aware, we have to take into consideration the PDPL restrictions and laws.
Sure.
But once this need arises, the data is there, and extending the accessibility to that data to the stakeholders within the market shouldn't be a big issue at all.
Would that then lead into potential credit ratings and sort of what is the risk liability of that person, that trader versus another trader? Precisely.
And it's a very important point when it comes to credit rating. Now, a lot of people have been arguing, I mean, why are you investing in electronic checks? Check as a payment instruction is dying, and why are we really interested in checks? But to be completely honest, when it comes to individuals and large corporates with very good cash flows and healthy cash flows, I don't think that checks is a vital payments method or a vital need. Sure. But when we go to these smaller markets, specifically SME with liquidity and cash flow issues, buying on credit is a survival necessity. Yeah. And having security checks is just a way for the supplier to be comfortable that I can guarantee my rights, and I can guarantee that I will be eventually paid off. So the more information we provide this market, the more comfortable they will be dealing and trading with each other. And we're expecting that to obviously, if I may say, have very positive impact on the overall economy and the development and the growth of the SME markets in particular.
Right.
Especially them being under financed by the banking industry.
Sure. Yep.
They rely heavily on checks in general for let's say finance as a financing service, as opposed to let's say a benefit company being a corporate being able to get funded by the bank by a loan, for example. The next point, which is actually that's a continuation of the first point. The checks is available. The E-Check is available on 24/7 basis, so it's a full platform online. You're able to write electronic checks around the clock, request checkbooks around the clock, deposits around the clock. I do have some cutoff times just to make the bank's life easier and the customer's expectation as well more clear. In terms of checkbook requests, for example, some banks have instant approval of checkbook requests, other banks have manual.
Right.
It depends on each bank's internal processes. We didn't really intervene. We gave the bank the freedom. But what's most important that the checkbook approval does not exceed 2 business days. That's the maximum number of days that the customer or the bank is allowed.
Yeah.
Some banks will not approve a checkbook based on outdated KYC data or having a bounce check. So whatever kind of internal, let's say, processes within the bank, and we haven't as well stopped any of those practices. The checkbook charges remains as is. It's up to the bank whether they want to charge more, less, or same as the paper check. That's completely within the bank's, let's say, control. The last, one more point is easy and convenience, obviously. With electronic mechanisms, ease and convenience just comes as a result. And empowering SME is just, again, stressing on the fact that it is today, even from not only from terms of, if I may say, as a finance facility or a post-dated facility, check facility, but also SME markets today for outgoing payments tend to have low digital adoption, because the banks are not providing much of digital payments when it comes to SMEs. They're focusing on corporates and retail mainly. So the SME sometimes is neglected.
Sure.
So digitalizing the check is another way of us to digitalize the outgoing payments as well of the SME markets in Bahrain.
Okay.
So one of the important attributes of the electronic check is that it is linked with, if I may say, the digital signature platform, the CA, Certification Authority Platform of Bahrain. It is recognized, or not of Bahrain, we're not the only one, but sure, as we speak today, we're the only licensed one.
Sure.
So today, for example, the law refers to the CA as a trust service provider. A trust service provider provides digital signatures and seals for customers to sign and endorse checks. So we're starting with checks, but in the future, we're having much bigger plans to extend them, for example, to contracts,
right,
to any kind of electronic financial communication,
right,
to digitalize and move away from paper, let's say paper-based communications and documentations. It is accepted as per the current legislations and laws of the country. It has a very high level of security, and we're going to shed more light into the security aspects of it later on, inshallah. And it also enables digitalization of signatures and verifying the signature on
right,
spot instantly,
right,
without having to rely on the check to go to the bank, and then at the bank level, the signature will be verified.
You bring a very important point here. When you say you verify the signature,
Yes.
is that the signature that the bank has on hand, or do you use a signature that's recognized in my sort of identity card, or is that the signature that needs to be something that's recognized within Benefit itself? So which signature verifies my signature, if you understand that?
Well, I tend to, your question is very clear, and that's an area of confusion that I've noticed quite, if I say across multiple meetings when it comes to digital signatures. Now, people kind of misconcepts, or let's say electronic signature or digital signature. Electronic signature is a scanned image of the signature.
Correct.
Now, the scanned image of the signature doesn't have a high security controls and attributes to it. So it's not recognized by the current laws in the country as an accepted signature. Digital signature is a complete different technology. It depends on a PKI technology, public key infrastructure, where I issue a private and public key pair, and those pair of keys work together. And just in a nutshell, it's some kind of like algorithm, security algorithm that is responsible of hashing and encrypting the content of that PDF document.
Right.
And with that, I will be having your electronic seal.
Right.
So with your seal, I will be able to tell that it is you who have hashed and encrypted and signed that document. And the only person who has access to that seal is you,
right,
as Adil Mahrouz.
Right.
No one is able to have access to your seal. How are we securing that seal? We will, inshallah, get into it further when we go to the TSP service and the security aspects around the electronic check.
So if I summarize it, you basically digitalize me, if you will.
Yes, it is a digital identity. That's a very good way of saying it. Some countries use, I'm not gonna tap into digital identities because that's not the area of Benefit. That's a governmental project. But other countries, for example, UAE, and I think also Saudi Arabia, have used the PKI technology, digital identity, for their citizens. But that's something else. I'm talking here only about signatures and authenticating and verifying and signing the documents. That's it. So in this slide, I'm just presenting the overall infrastructure of the electronic checks. The reason why I am presenting that, just to give the audience an understanding of what is Benefit managing and what it has at the back end with the banks.
Sure.
So as you can see, I have two main boxes, Benefit environment and the bank's environment. On Benefit environment, I have customer-facing interfaces, which is the Benefit Pay for the individuals. And that's a very important point to bring to your attention over here.
Yep.
Benefit Pay is meant for individuals, not for corporates.
Although it's sort of overlapping at the moment.
It is, but that's another project we're working on. And maybe that's another topic to be discussing.
Sure.
But today, because Benefit Pay identifier is a CPR only.
Yep.
I don't identify a client as a CR. So therefore, I cannot have a CRI ban on Benefit Pay because I'm going to have KYC issues over here.
Sure.
So Benefit Pay is focused only on retail customers. We do have a specialized mobile app for, if I may say, corporate clients, or whether they're large corporates, governmental entities, non-government, non-commercial entities, for example, school, churches, universities, charities, whatever, you name it, along with as well small entities, SMEs and corporates. So we have an ECheck app and we also have an ECheck portal. ECheck app is meant for the authorized signatories signing and approving the checks processes. And ECheck portal is an administrative portal given to the administrative users of the corporates to do like the requests and the writing and the follow-up and the depositing, some kind of like back office operation not related to the executive's management scope as well.
Yep.
And we have two important services which are linked to two important decrees issued in the country, the electronic record management system and the trust service provider. Electronic record management system manages the check, the electronic check as a record, as a negotiable instrument. Just like, for example, we have warehouse receipts or another transferable record, or bill of exchange, for example. Those are all examples of electronic, let's say, negotiable instruments, electronic records that can be managed, for example, within that platform. For now, it's only electronic checks, but the platform is there in case in the future the need arises. The trust service provider is meant for issuing digital certificates and digital seals for the individuals and peoples to be able to sign and prove that they are the ones that have signed that document, and that is as per the current legislation in the country.
Yeah.
This entire platform is interfaced end-to-end. So it's online end-to-end with the banks, with all the banks that are commercial banks by Central Bank of Bahrain and Islamic banks as well under volume 2 of Central Bank Rulebook. They are all by mandate forced to become part of that platform, given they're providing safe accounts.
Right.
Registration in E-Check covers both the beneficiaries and the current account owners issuing checks.
Right.
Okay, the next slide.
I was going to ask before we move on.
Go ahead.
What I don't see here is maybe a third box, which is sort of the regulator or any part of any government. Is that part of the process?
In terms of a process, yes. But in terms of an infrastructure and platform,
no.
It's fully hosted by Benefit, and I have interfaces with my backends. So here I'm only focusing on the systems, the technology behind the electronic checks.
Understood.
So that's a very important slide, because one of the biggest, let's say, doubts or questions or gray areas is on which legal ground was the electronic check based? What did Bahrain have to do? And here where, to be honest, the entire FIBC Central Bank of Bahrain, along with the IGA, because eventually this was at the IGA level, being a trust service accreditor within Bahrain. And then recently TRA, along also with multiple governmental entities that have all worked together towards making that, let's say, project available. Starting with EDB when they were issuing or drafting the laws, which is Decree 55 and Decree 54, and all the way through the entire, let's say, ecosystem within the government have all worked together. And I'd like to thank them all through your platform for the tremendous harmony that I have seen in this project implementation. From the PMO office, from the Prime Minister office, from the TRA, from the Ministry of Telecommunication, being under the TRA, from IGA, Central Bank. I mean, I could go on and on forever. EDB, obviously, with the people who have contributed. Not to forget my dear banks. Without them, I would not have a service to provide, obviously. So one of the first important law that was issued is Decree 54 of 2018, which is meant for electronic communication and financial transaction. That law is an overall guideline for resolution number 4 of TRA for trust service provider, which based on that law and that resolution of TRA, I am able to provide digital signatures and digital certificates. The second important law is Law 54 or Decree 54 of 2018 as well, which is for electronic transferable records. This law, subsequent to that law, Central Bank has issued a resolution number 13, which is meant for recognizing E-Check as an electronic transferable record. So those resolutions and decrees were vital for me to be able to have a solid legal ground to build that system and to have the entire community depend on it. Most importantly, as well, or lastly, Central Bank of Bahrain has issued a directive which details the entire management of the electronic record as an E-Check, including the authoritative copies, the evidences, the archiving, the obligations on benefits or the obligations on bank as an operator of that service. So having this holistic, let's say, ecosystem, the E-Check is a well-recognized legal bounding negotiable instrument within Bahrain that is accepted at the courts.
Just looking at the process and the timeline, this has been in works for years.
Well, to be honest,
2018,
yes.
And I would say even before that, because it takes time for the law to be put in place.
True, that's true.
17, maybe earlier. So that's a long time, and it's a long journey, I would say, to get to where we are today.
It's a long journey, and one of the most important milestones is that with the E-Check, Bahrain has provided 2 important platforms. Trust service provider, a CA, a TSP, along with the electronic transferable record platform. Other countries, for example, neighboring countries, they already have a CA, but they're not using it for private sector or for commerce. Right. It's being used only within the, like, for example, governmental services, for instance, such as UAE Pass and other examples within, for example, Hataf al-Saudiya.
Right.
However, Bahrain, not having a CA established prior to the E-Check in Bahrain, that had benefit, or that made me as benefit responsible of creating one and establishing one out of scratch. And creating a TSP as per the international, let's say, standards is a gigantic job. And this is where IGA and TRA team were very helpful. very much helpful. And I'm very happy to see this live. And I'm sure that both TRA and TRA, IG and TRA will also be happy to see a TSP finally available in Bahrain.
Yeah. I think we've gone one step ahead and commercialized it, basically.
True,
right.
That's true. So from a security perspective, the entire security is, let's say, centralized around it's being based on a digital certificate and a digital seal. So there's a private and public key that I issue to each and every single customer within the ECheck. And the private key, as per the international standards, must be stored within the HSM of the CE, which is the hardware security module. It's like a vault. So, and I need to secure that no one has access to your key other than you,
right.
Which comes me to a very important point, which is the awareness of my dear users of Benefit Pay or ECheck app or the ECheck portal as well. How can someone have access to the private key? By using the ECheck app and the More Benefit Pay app, and by authenticating yourself to the app will be able to release the private key. We'll be able to request the HSM to sign and to see that PDF document using your private key.
Right.
So under any circumstance, no matter what happens, no one should ever disclose any credential information to anyone.
Right.
Not Benefit, not central bank, not anyone.
Right.
With digital certificates, it becomes extremely vital and important because once someone has access to the private key, then this signature is bounded by law.
Right.
And it's live, and you're liable for that signature. So the credentials of accessing the app, no one will call you and tell me, give me your OTP,
right.
Give me your password. You have outdated KYC documents. This is absolute, how should I say? No.
Right.
No one will ever call the customer and request for such information.
Right.
So security I could do that much to secure the platform, but if the user himself does not secure himself and educates himself, then I'm gonna have a small gap. And I'm as weak as my weakest link in security.
Of course. Yeah.
So in addition to such, we're also having international standard, which is the ETSI standard. ETSI is European Telecommunication Specification Standards Institute, for qualified signature. That's a well-recognized international standard for digital service certificates.
Yep.
It's legally accepted and it's accredited by both the Central Bank of Bahrain and certified by the TRA. So obviously, it cannot be stolen, it cannot be counterfeit, it cannot be forged. So all of those aspects secure the electronic check.
Right. So essentially, to simplify what you were saying, if I disclose something, I put myself at risk. Otherwise, the system itself protects me 100%.
Yes, if you disclose not something, credentials,
right.
Only credentials, which is the login password or any kind of a password for accessing the platform.
Right.
Okay. So how to apply? Now, for corporates, because it's not straightforward. I mean, there are board resolutions, there are authorized signatories. I mean, I have the KYC of the CR itself and then the KYC of the owner of that CR.
Yeah.
So as we speak today, and that's an area where maybe I'm not that, if I may say, happy with, but
sure.
It's given where we are, I think that is a very good progress. In this process over here, the corporate client has to go to the bank to fill in some kind of form. So there are some kind of paper forms, only one time, a registration process only. And that's only to verify the board resolution and to verify the authorized signatory, because I will need to capture the data of the authorized signatory. So for example, let's assume that I am a CEO of Shafak company for the sake of argument. So then here, the bank will have to capture my CR information and my information as well. For example, my name, my CPR, my date of birth, for the system to be able to recognize and to verify me, to identify me, and issue a certificate for me to sign on behalf of my company. The next thing, now, some customers have dedicated relationship manager with their bank, so they could call the relationship manager, or they can go to any branch within Bahrain. If there is any bank or any branch that will not accept the request of the customer to register, then this is violating the operating rules and the regulations of the central bank. So the laws, or let's say the operating rule that issued by Benefits along with the central bank, protects the customer by enforcing all branches to accept any incoming walk-in customer for registration. In addition to, you're able to talk to your RM directly.
Right.
You should fill in the forms that defines the data of the CR itself. For example, your CR, the type of establishment, etc. And then we need to also fill in the information of the accounts that you are having with the banks. And most importantly, the classes and the conditional rules around those accounts. For example, class A, class B, up to 10,000 BD, up to 100,000 BD, etc. Jointly, singly, whatever it is. But we're also adding two additional, let's say, authorization layers, which is approving administrative users creation and approving checkbox requests.
Right.
Those are not part of the board resolution, but those, we need to know who's the authorized, let's say, party at the bank that is able to request such kind of things from the system. It could be an authorized party as per the board resolution. It could not be. It's up to the corporate. The corporate has the complete freedom to shape that process the way that they feel is better for them. Then I need to capture the data of the authorized signatory itself. And then once the bank has the full documentation, the bank has 5 business days to enroll you within the ECheck system, maximum.
Right.
From the moment that this request has been approved. Now, on which basis will the bank reject and not allow me to register to ECheck? If you have audited AKYC data, for example, if you're an abuser of checks, if you have no balance in your accounts, but if you're able to get electronic check and paper checks and issue paper checks, you should be able to get electronic checks. There is no difference in terms of the validations or the approvals of paper or electronic.
Right.
They are checks, they are similar, there's no difference between both of them. Once the bank has registered the authorized signatory, then you will be receiving a notification from the system that you've been successfully registered, and you have to activate your account by downloading the ECheck app from the iOS and Android store. You download the app, you activate yourself, and then you will have a certificate issued to you, and then you could start writing and signing checks.
Could I download this multiple times? So for example, if I'm a large corporate, CFO may write checks, but you also have to delegate the authority to, as you mentioned, ask for a threshold of value.
Sure.
I can have my finance manager up to a certain value also write checks.
Actually, that's a very important point. Each and every single authorized signatory should have a separate mobile app, because the certificate is, when I authenticate that you are, for example, Ali Al-Mahrouz, an authorized signatory of, let's say, BCCI, what I do from my side is that I use your device ID as a hardware identification of who you are. So it's that device, the mobile device itself, that I use as well, along with your information, to recognize you and to allow the system to access your private key.
Right.
So that is why the mobile, this is a fact of life. The mobile is me. Absolutely. Everything about me is in this mobile. Yep. My social life, my banking life, and everything is in this mobile. So the same thing as well applies to the electronic check. And we're limiting signing the checks to mobile apps, not to the ECheck portal, for the sake of identifying the device and the hardware used to access the system. I cannot do that with a desktop access over internet.
Right.
It could access from home, from work, from a mobile. You get the point?
Understood.
So that's why, to secure the private key, I'm limiting it to the device, and I'm recognizing and registering that device ID.
So can I use multiple devices? No.
As one user, no.
Right. So
For
I have
example,
to choose what
Macros is only, and which is a very good example. Here within the ECheck app, you were able to profile. For example, let's assume I am authorized signatory of Benefit, and I have my own company as well. So within the ECheck app, I will be able to manage Benefit and my own profile as well.
Right.
And I will be switching the profile A and B based on what kind of service or what kind of check that I am seeking to have over here.
Okay.
That's it. The last, I think that's it. We're done.
Maybe I have one question before we go into the Q&A. So
yes.
Bring on that last point. So if I'm in charge of a group of companies, I would use the same device, but like you said, multiple profiles for the group.
Yes.
As opposed to multiple devices.
Sure.
Right.
So you'll be able to switch from profile to the other. And you will be able as well within the same profile. For example, let's assume benefit company again over here. So we might have accounts with bank A and bank B. So I will be able to switch banks within my benefit profile or switch profile at a higher hierarchy level.
Right. Okay, that's very interesting. I think thank you very much for going through the presentation. I think now we will open it up to our guest viewers to sort of run through the Q&A, and I've seen quite a number of questions that have come in. So if I just sort of go through one or the questions that have come in. Sure. Sorry? Okay, so I think there are a few questions that have come in already, and for anyone that has raised their hand, we will sort of hear their questions as well. So I see our colleague, Mr. Ahmed bin Khalil, if we maybe go to you and sort of hear your question.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam.
I have a small question now. If the bounce check it came back from any company or any personal checks, what would be the rules and regulations against that gentleman who had issued the check? This is the first question. Second question, do I have a grace period at least of 72 hours when I issue a check to one client and that a client dispute the contract between me and him, then I can return my check back again and I stop paying him? Is there any facility or is there any, what we call procedure that I can return my check within 72 hours? Like previously, which we have with the normal paper check, when we issue a check from one bank to another bank, it takes 72 hours to be cleared from the receivers. So I don't know, is there any procedure or any a way that I can return if I have a dispute between me and one client, or I have a dispute between me and another company? I stop my work with him, so I want to return my check within at least 72 hours. Is there any possibility of that situation? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. I think if we just recap the two questions that we got, I think the first question was really, if a check has bounced, what are sort of the consequences of that, if I summarize that question?
Sure. Now, a bounced paper check or a bounced electronic check are the same regardless. And today, a return check is a criminal offense. Let's say away from the electronic check in general, for checks, whether it's electronic or paper, we are working. There is an initiative with Bob, the Bahrain Association of Bank, and I'd like to thank them as well for being proactive, if I may say, in this aspect. We're trying to work on a committee level to revise or to enhance the execution, if I may say, of a bounce check against, for example, if I, the payee, would like to raise a case against you, I will have to go to the police office. From the police office, it has to go to the public prosecution. And then if based on that, either it goes to the courts of law or it's resolved at the public prosecution level, depending on the case at hand. We're trying to revise that scope or that process in association with Bob. Bob is taking a lead in that aspect, and I have to give credit to Bob in that particular point for all checks, whether it's electronic or paper checks. But for now, it's whatever is applicable for paper is applicable as well for electronic checks.
And I think the second question was, in case I have a dispute with a counterpart and I've issued a check, is there any grace period to get that check returned? And I think you touched upon it
yes,
briefly.
It could be cancelled. But here it's a different aspect. I'd like to thank Mr. Ahmed for raising that point. That's a very important point. And we actually would like to, if through Bahrain Chamber of Commerce as well, if you could help us, for us to be able to amend our existing regulations or let's say benefit operating rules in particular, and liaise with the regulator to central bank to see the possibilities of embedding those within our system, we would like to understand from the let's say SMEs or the corporate markets, the commerce markets in Bahrain, what do they want from us for the electronic checks? What kind of, for example, needs and requirements they have, whether we have them or not. having the data there and having a centralized system is the only first step.
Yeah.
Understanding the market and what the need of the market is and what the need of the trade of the, let's say, businesses is vital. And having 72 hours of a grace where the drawer is able to, let's say, return or remove that check without having the payee approval is something that, as we speak today, is not in place. But if it is a vital need, and I think we are more than happy to have maybe a team or to try to work out the best scenario, understand the requirements from the market directly, and then we will liaise that through our operating rules with our regulator as well.
Sure. Okay. So I think before we sort of go through some of the questions that have come through, is there anyone else that maybe raise their hand, or if you do have a question that you'd like to raise your hand, please feel free to do so. So I think while we wait for that, we can go through some of the questions that have come through. I've seen someone raise their hand. Maybe if we go to Mr. Azim Abdulaziz.
Thank you so much for this wonderful conference, to letting us know more about the ECheck. But just I have one question regarding the mobile app. As you said that we should have a separate mobile device in order to track the information. But what if the case like if I lost my mobile, what does it matter? Like how can I solve that issue? Can you please explain? Thank you.
I'd like to thank Mr. Remy for asking that question. That's a vital, important point to discuss actually. Now, if you lost your mobile app, whether you're a benefits pay user, whether you are, using the ECheck app, you have two options: either to download the app on a new device and re-authenticate yourself. By that, once you have activated yourself on another device, automatically the previous device will be deactivated. Or if you want to go one step further, you can revoke your certificates and you shall revoke your signatures. By revoking your certificates, you have to end your relationship with the ECheck through all banks. So for example, let's just assume that today, as I speak, I have bank with Bank A and Bank B. Then I need to call Bank A and tell Bank A, deactivate it from the ECheck service. And then I need to call Bank B and say, deactivate me again from the ECheck service. Once all the active relationships are ended, the certificate will automatically be revoked. So you have two options. Revoking the certificates is an extreme,
Sure,
if I may say, approach, because you'll have to go through the reactivation again, and it could be a lengthy process. So if it's a mobile device being lost, just simply downloading it on another device and activating yourself and authenticating yourself will be sufficient enough to, let's say, deactivate the previous device.
Yeah. Okay. We have another question coming in from Saeed Amaruddin. If we go to Saeed.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Thanks a lot for the call. Actually, it was a nice presentation. I just want to know, now due to the current situation, when we are raising the like a PDC check, ECheck, and before the maturity period of the check, and the authorization signatory is no more working with the company. So in that case, do you want us to do reauthorization, or based on the old authorization, the check will be it will be encashed?
That is a very good question, and thank you for raising that. Now, from a TSP perspective, at that point of time when the check was signed, Shafaq was an authorized signatory for the company that she represents, and the time was valid and genuine. And the check is valid and genuine. After, let's say, within 2 months of time, I have resigned, and then I'm no longer part of the authorized signatory. At that point of signing, the check is valid and is genuine, and there should nothing should stop the customer or the bank from accepting and clearing that check. Some banks are requesting the customer to update are rejecting the check, if I may say, due to, let's say, change authorized signatories. But that applies for paper checks, because we are depending as a bank to verify the signatures on images of the checks on the system against the actual physical check on the paper. But with the electronic signature, I have timestamp and seals, and I have archived those timestamp and seals over the period of, which is an important point to mention, is that as per the law, I'm enforced to archive the data, all logs and electronic timestamps and seals for a period of not less than 10 years from the date of clearing the check or the date of the check is expired.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So maybe I'll go through a few questions that have come through as well. So one question is, in case of financing, bank is asking for the PDCs for 5 years or for the term of financing. How will we issue this through ECheck? So will we, I guess, will we be able to issue
Yes.
5 years worth of PDCs?
Yes, you could issue, you could issue 25 years mortgage loan security checks if you wish. But when you write an issue check, there is 2 ways to write a check, an electronic check. One is by writing the free text name. For example, you're not yet registered, you're not using ECheck benefit pay anything, and I just say Ali Al-Mahrouz. You can take that check to your branch, and your branch must approve the check and deposit it. Or you can register yourself on the ECheck platform. If you're registered, then there's another option when writing a check, which is what we would like to, if I may say, encourage the market to utilize. Rather than writing a check using a free text name, I will write the check against your CR number. For example, if it's the bank's who's the beneficiary, then I will use the bank CR number and write the check against the CR number of the bank. What happens over here, the system will automatically notify the bank that, for example, let's say Nestle, I don't know, just saw the water in front of me. Nestle has issued you 5 electronic checks. So the system will handle notifying and confirming to the payee that the electronic checks has been issued to you against 5 years or 6 years. So it's, I mean, today the customer has the flexibility, but we'd like to encourage issuing checks against IDs or mobile numbers for individuals, which we call them qualified. Qualified because we know who is the rightful owner of that check from a system perspective.
I mean, I guess also from a business perspective, that would also help cash flow projections, right? Because if I get the notification, I know I'm going to receive this money, over the next 5 years.
Precisely.
Okay. Oh, I think we've got another raised hand by our one of our viewees, Mr. Muhammad Ali. If we go to Muhammad. Mr. Muhammad, if you have any questions? No? Okay, so I think we move on. Again, another question by Mr. Sayyid Amaruddin, we go back to you.
Hi, there's one more question regarding same PDCs, which has been issued. Actually, when we issue a PDC check, the payee bank, if something happened to the bank, like it going to liquidation and the losses, and they might close the bank. So in that case, how do you are going to pay the beneficiary? So in this case, we have to issue the new check with another beneficiary or a pay bank, or it will be continuing with the same.
Can maybe I rephrase your question if you allow me to see if I understood? Are you saying the bank is liquidating and I'm using another bank to issue the check?
No, I'm assuming that this is the drawee bank, which is the bank of the drawer. Am I right?
Yeah, the pay bank actually, the pay bank.
The payee, the beneficiary bank? Yeah. Okay, now, when it comes to PDCs, the ECheck is an electronic transferable record management system. It manages the electronic record as a record, regardless which bank it will be deposited in the future. So when a check is written to you, for example, and you receive the check, in that point, from that perspective, you haven't defined on which bank you will be depositing that account. It's just a check issued against your name. Today, you keep the checks in your vaults within your offices. I am safekeeping those checks within my central system for you, for your use across the entire life cycle of the PDC check, and then 10 years after the expiry of that PDC check.
Okay. I think in the interest of time, we'll take maybe 2-3 more questions. And I've seen a lot of questions been coming through in the chat box as well. What we might do is sort of answer those questions after the webinar and share those with the slides. Maybe we can go to Mr. Abdurrahman.
Hi, good morning all. My question is regarding that bounced check which you explained some time back. So normally with the physical check, if the check is bounced for any reason like insufficient funds or anything, the customer will ask us to present it again second time. When the physical check is the same check, we can present it next day, or I think maximum 3 times a check can be presented in the physical check form.
Sure.
What will happen in this e-check? Whether the check will get cancelled if it is bounced, or it will be available for representation again?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Abdurrahman. It's the same exact workflow of the paper check. We haven't changed any of the, let's say, processes around the paper check. So it's the same thing. 3 presentments, and you can present it at the same day, or you can present it the next day, depending on whatever you agree with the drawer of the bank.
Maybe if I reaffirm what you said at the very beginning. The ECheck system, you just digitalize. Nothing has changed.
Yes.
Right. So I think for a lot of the questions that people have been asking, what you currently do, you continue to do.
Yes.
You just change the platform and means of how you issue that check.
It's no longer a paper document in your hand. It's a digital document.
Right. Okay. Right. So I think maybe we'll take one final question. I apologize. It says prototype. Maybe if you can just introduce your name and then sort of your question.
Hi, I'm Zia from Rototype. I have just a simple question. In case of dispute, at times, in case of a physical check, if a company or a person decides to go for litigation or legalization, he needs some evidence from the bank and present this to the court of law.
True.
So what is that system into the framework that allows us to do that? Thank you.
Again, I love the questions I love the interaction by the audience. I mean, I could tell that this is a very important subject, and I could see a lot of questions. So if you would want to have a follow-up session, we're more than happy as Benefit to arrange such, because I think that checks is a vital trading, let's say, commodity, if I may say, any payments method. And I'm sure there are lots of questions by our dear audience. Getting back to that important question is the fact that today, for example, and for some reason, I forgot the question. I lost track. That's so weird. I'm so sorry. That rarely happens with me, by the way.
So I think it's in terms of the legal process.
Precisely, yes. Now, as a customer using the ECheck app or the ECheck portal, you have access to what we call the return advice, which has an image of the check back and forth. It has the full details of the check presentment cycles, the return reasons, etc. You are able to take that copy. For it to be an authoritative copy accepted by the courts of law, you'll have to go get the bank stamp and signature on it. But we are also, that's for as we speak today. But what we are also trying to do with the rated parties within the country is give them direct access to this information, not to have the customer need to go print that PDF document, go to the bank, get its time to stamp, and then deliver it physically to the related parties. That's a project by itself. I mean, integrating, if I may say, the legal system within the ECheck, that's a project by itself. And inshallah, with the support of central bank, this is part of the agenda as well. But it needs time. So for now, that's how it's done.
Okay. All right. We are slightly over, and I can see there's actually still quite a lot of participation. I do say last question, but I think we might go for one more, if that's all right with you.
I'll leave it to you. I have a commitment at 11:30. So
sure. I think
if I could leave at 11:20, that's fine.
Sure. Then I think we'll hit one more, and then we'll wrap it up after that.
As you wish.
So maybe going back to Mr. Ahmed bin Khalil, the final question from you, sir.
The other question which I want to raise up here,
Your voice is far.
because I'm driving now.
I drive safe, please.
Don't worry, I still like
We can't hear you, Ahmed.
Okay. The bounce check, which comes back from the normal checks.
I apologize. We really can't hear you.
How about let me just share the email. Shafaq, SHAFAQALKALKOOHEJI. Oh, that's my Gmail. Shafaq, I'm sorry again, that's my Gmail. Shafaq, SHAFAQK@benefit.bh. This is my email. Maybe we could answer
Sure.
any questions via email as well.
And I think in any case, any questions in the chat box that we have now, we will download those questions and we will bring them to your attention. And if we get those answers, what we can do is there is a live recording that will be on YouTube for this for the webinar today, but we also share the slides and maybe answers to the questions.
I think that would be good. That would be good as well.
Okay, so I think in the interest of time, thank you very much for coming and joining us today. It's been a fantastic session and very informative. And I think we've enlightened the audience about what Benefit is doing and the ECheck platform itself and how they can benefit from it.
Thank you. Actually, the ECheck is for the corporates. We've built it having the corporates in our perspective. They were the main targets of the ECheck because they're the main users of the of the checks in general. So this system is for them. So hearing their feedback is extremely vital for us as well to ensure the success of this project.
All right. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. We've had fantastic participation today. And we'd like to thank the Chamber for organizing and my fellow members in the Finance, Insurance, and Tax Committee. Thank you very much.